Have you ever walked into a place where you instantly felt like you didn't belong the second the door hissed shut behind you? Not because you were loud, or doing too much, or even out of place, but because they'd already decided who you were before you even spoke a single word. That was the exact, heavy air inside the Haven Bank branch on North Chestnut Street in Springfield, Missouri. It was the kind of place with coffee-stained beige carpet, dying ficus plants wilting sadly in the corner, and a wall clock that ticked louder than the actual customers. There was no music playing, just a thick, almost palpable silence, laced with suspicion. Danielle Rivers stepped through the automatic doors as if she had a purpose, because she did. Dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, a crisply pressed shirt, her smooth, dark skin seemed to glow under the cheap fluorescent lights. Her low heels clicked softly against the floor, and for a second, the entire room seemed to pause. She caught the eye of the security guard, a polite, almost imperceptible nod. He looked up from his phone, nodding back hesitantly, his eyes flickering with an unasked question. Danielle didn't flinch. She was used to this. At 43, she was the CEO of Rivers Global Strategies, a woman whose life was a tapestry woven with private jet travel, intricate government contracts, hard-fought wins, and boardrooms that never quite expected someone like her to sit at the head of the table. Today wasn't about winning or approving anything grand. Today was just about verifying a wire transfer, a final, mundane step in a 3-year, painstaking negotiation with a German firm for a $3 billion partnership. She'd flown in from Dallas that very morning to stop by this local branch. Not by chance, but by design. This specific bank had been flagged as one of the potential anchor points for her company's new U.S. expansion plan. A quiet test, a simple, almost insignificant task that held immense symbolic weight. Danielle approached the counter, her gaze briefly settling on the name tag of the teller, Caleb Warner. He looked barely 20-something, pale, thin, his jaw clenched as if this were his first job and he already hated every moment of it. Danielle offered a polite, professional smile. "Hi, I'm here to verify an international transfer. My team sent the paperwork ahead, but they said I needed to show ID in person." Caleb barely looked at her. "Name, Danielle Rivers," he muttered, typing something into the computer with one hand, the other idly spinning a pen between his fingers. "ID." She handed it over without hesitation. A state-issued ID with the gold Real ID star in the corner, clean, current, her picture staring back like she still had something to prove, even after all these years. Caleb took it. He paused. Looked up at her. Looked down at the ID again. Then back up. "You the account holder?" "Yes." "CEO?" "Yes." Something shifted behind his eyes. Disbelief. Disrespect. He didn't say the words, but what he did next screamed them. With the same hand holding her ID, he simply let it drop. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, almost imperceptible flick of the wrist, a calculated gesture of disdain. Danielle's ID hit the cold tile floor with a soft, dismissive thud. She blinked slowly, once. Then she calmly bent down, picked it up with 2 fingers, and stood straight again, her posture radiating an almost unnerving composure. Caleb leaned back in his chair, arms folded, a smirk playing on his lips, as if he'd just proven a point no one had asked him to make. "You people are always in a rush for something," he muttered, his eyes now fixed on his screen, avoiding hers. For half a second, it was dead silent between them. No movement. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a thick, static tension. Danielle's voice didn't crack. It didn't rise. Just one, perfectly modulated sentence. "Thank you for your time." She turned, her heels clicking louder this time, a deliberate punctuation mark to the incident, and walked straight out of the bank. The automatic door hissed shut behind her, but the story didn't end there. In fact, it hadn't even truly begun. Danielle sat behind the wheel of her rental car, a dark grey Lincoln Continental, parked directly under a crooked security camera in the bank's lot. The leather was warm from the afternoon sun, but she didn't turn on the AC. She just sat there, one hand still holding her ID, the other resting on her thigh, her fingers curling into the fabric of her pantsuit as if she needed something tangible to anchor her. This wasn't new. She'd seen it countless times before, In elevators, at conferences, even in hotel lobbies where she was the keynote speaker. That subtle twitch in someone's expression when they realized you didn't quite match the pre-written story in their head. But something about today felt different. It wasn't the muttered words. It wasn't even the overt disrespect. It was how effortlessly, how naturally, it had come to him. Danielle tapped her ID gently against the steering wheel. This wasn't just about her. That $3 billion deal, the culmination of 3 years of relentless work, was about her team, her investors, her name. But most importantly, it was a test. The branch in Springfield was one of 3 being considered for a strategic partnership under Rivers Global's new U.S. expansion initiative. A plan designed to bring investment and opportunity to small towns, working-class cities, places often left behind. This was supposed to be a step forward, a win for everyone. Instead, it had become a moment that told her something she hadn't wanted to admit. Some people simply weren't ready to move forward with her. Her phone buzzed in the passenger seat. A text from her COO, Nina Vaughn, just got word Frankfurt finalized their side. Wire confirmation needed by 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. All green on our end. Danielle didn't respond. She stared at the screen, her lips pressed tight. Then, quietly, deliberately, she powered the phone off. It was 2:12 p.m. She started the car, shifted into drive, but she wasn't heading back to the hotel just yet. Inside the bank, Caleb was finishing his shift. No manager asked questions. No one pulled him aside. He laughed at something on his phone, popped a piece of gum, and moved on, oblivious to the ripple he'd just created. Danielle stopped at a red light across the street. A group of teenagers were gathered outside a Family Dollar, passing around a bag of hot Cheetos, laughing like the world wasn't heavy, wasn't complicated. She thought about her first job, a waitress at a Waffle House in Monroe, Louisiana, at 17. Men twice her age calling her baby girl and touching her hand when they paid in cash. She didn't quit. She worked harder, saved everything. Then came Southern University, 2 degrees, 1 grueling unpaid internship. Then DC, where her first boss called her sweetheart every Monday until she finally got him fired. Everything she had, she earned twice over, fighting every inch of the way. So no, Caleb Warner wasn't new. He was a reflection of the system, another gatekeeper with a cheap name tag and a full sense of himself. But that didn't make the sting any less real. Danielle gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She thought about that moment, how he looked her in the eye, then threw her identity on the floor like trash. Not a mistake. A message. And in that moment, Danielle made a decision. It didn't come from rage. It didn't even come from pain. It came from absolute, chilling clarity. She reached into her purse, pulled out her secondary phone, the one only her board had the number for. She typed out one line. Pull the plug. I'll explain tonight. Send. The light turned green, but she wasn't driving back to the hotel just yet. Something deeper was stirring within her, something that had been quiet for far too long. It was 8 p.m. sharp, Central Time. Danielle sat at the sleek glass desk in her hotel suite, laptop open, camera off for now. Behind her, the Springfield skyline blinked in tired amber and halogen, utterly unaware it was about to lose a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Through her AirPods, she could already hear voices. Nina, her ever-loyal COO, Ellis from legal, Tariq from strategy, and 3 board members she barely saw outside quarterly reviews. All waiting. All wondering. She turned on her camera. Her face appeared on their screens. Sharp, calm, unreadable. Evening, everyone, she said, her voice betraying none of the turmoil that had churned within her for hours. Nina spoke first, her tone laced with concern. Danny, you all right? I'm fine, Danielle affirmed, her gaze steady. Ellis jumped in, his voice tight. We saw the email. I need clarification before we move forward. Are you officially terminating the Frankfurt deal? Yes, Danielle said, the single word simple, firm, absolute. Silence. A heavy, collective silence hung in the digital air. Tariq leaned in from his office in Miami, his expression a mix of disbelief and frustration. That's 3 years of work. You realize what's on the line? I do. And you're walking. I am. The board chair, a man named Clifford Ames, old money, East Coast ties, a polished mustache, and a house full of tennis trophies, unmuted slowly, his voice laced with patronizing authority. Forgive me, Danielle, but that's not a decision you can make without full board approval. Danielle smiled, but it was a smile devoid of warmth. I didn't sign anything yet, Clifford, so I'm not breaking a deal. I'm preventing one. Nina shifted uncomfortably, sensing the rising tension. Danielle, maybe tell them what happened at the bank. Danielle leaned forward, elbows on the desk, her voice utterly devoid of tremor, almost casual in its delivery. I visited the Springfield Haven Bank branch this afternoon. Not for ceremony, just to verify a routine wire in person. That branch was being evaluated for a strategic partnership under our U.S. reinvestment pilot. She paused, letting that sink in. Clifford's eyebrows rose. You went in person? Yes. I wanted to see how they'd treat someone they didn't recognize. Danielle didn't blink, her eyes fixed on the camera. The teller asked for ID. I handed it to him. He looked at me, looked down, then dropped it on the floor, deliberately. Said, and I quote, "You people are always in a rush for something." Then he leaned back like nothing happened. The board was quiet. Not shocked, perhaps, but quiet. Tariq muttered, "Christ." Ellis exhaled hard. We can file a civil complaint. They're branch policies. No, Danielle cut in, her voice unwavering. No press. No complaint. No headlines. But we could use this, Clifford interjected, ever the pragmatist. This moment, this incident, it could give us leverage. Push them to commit to long-term equity terms. She looked him dead in the eye. You think I want to build a partnership by twisting arms after they spit in my face? Nina rubbed her temples, caught between her loyalty to Danielle and the immense financial implications. So, you're saying the entire Frankfurt partnership hinges on a single teller in Missouri? No, Danielle replied, her gaze firm. It hinges on principle. This deal was about trust. About choosing institutions that serve all people. That moment showed me exactly how they serve. I won't build a legacy on that. Clifford sighed, straightening his cuff links, his patience visibly thinning. You're asking us to leave billions on the table because one employee had poor judgment. No, she said calmly. I'm asking you to recognize that disrespect isn't bad judgment. It's company culture in disguise. There was a long pause. Then Nina, sharp, loyal, and visibly tired, spoke up. Danielle's not wrong. All eyes turned to her. You think it's just one teller. You think this is a fluke. I've worked in banks. I've had to leave my degrees in my car just to avoid getting questioned in the lobby. Danielle walked into that branch as a test, and they failed. Ellis nodded slowly. Legally, we're clean if we walk. The board can vote to reposition the capital through our southeast infrastructure bucket. Clifford still looked unconvinced. But what do we tell Frankfurt? Danielle looked right into the camera, her resolve absolute. Nothing. We say the deal is no longer aligned with our objectives. No further comment. No drama. Just silence. But that's billions, he insisted again, a desperate plea. She folded her hands, her posture radiating quiet power. And dignity, she said, her voice barely a whisper, is worth more than every zero in that wire. No one responded. Finally, Clifford leaned back, a resigned sigh escaping him. You're the founder. Your call. Danielle nodded. One click. Call ended. She stared at her reflection in the black laptop screen, a faint, unyielding silhouette. But outside that boardroom, the ripples of her decision were only just beginning. And some people weren't ready for what came next. The next morning, the Haven Bank branch on North Chestnut opened at 9 a.m. sharp. The first customer walked in at 9:02. By 9:05, the branch manager, Gwen Lee, had 3 voicemails blinking on her phone, all from corporate. Something was off. She poured herself a stale cup of coffee, sat down, and pressed play on the first message. Hey Gwen, this is Trevor from Regional, just giving you a heads up. We had a big client evaluation go sideways yesterday. You may be hearing from corporate. Call me back ASAP. Gwen frowned, a knot forming in her stomach. She clicked the next one. Gwen, it's Trevor again. I just found out who the client was. Rivers Global Strategies. Yeah, that Rivers. We need to talk. Her hand froze mid-sip, the lukewarm coffee forgotten. By 9:08, she was scrolling through emails with one eye and waving over teller with the other. Where's Caleb? She asked. The teller shrugged. Late again. Probably stopped for breakfast. At 9:14, he strolled in, same slouch, same hoodie under his jacket, didn't say a word as he clocked in. Caleb, Gwen said sharply, her voice cutting through the casual morning hum. My office, now. He groaned, dragging his feet like a teenager being called to the principal's office. Once inside, Gwen didn't waste time. Did you have an interaction with a woman named Danielle Rivers yesterday? Caleb scratched his neck, feigning nonchalance. Maybe. Black lady. Business suit. Gwen's stomach dropped. Yes. What happened? He blinked, then shrugged. She gave me her ID. I verified it. Did you drop it on the floor? A pause. She dropped it, I think. You think? Gwen repeated, her voice rising slightly. Caleb smirked. Look, I didn't mean nothing. She was acting all stiff. I didn't say anything bad. You didn't say anything bad. Gwen repeated slowly, incredulously. I said something about being in a rush, but not like, in a racist way or anything. I didn't even know who she was. Gwen leaned back in her chair, suddenly exhausted, the weight of the situation crashing down on her. She's the CEO of a firm we were in talks with. One of the largest private infrastructure firms in the country. Okay. She came here on purpose to test us. Caleb scoffed. Well, that's dumb. No, Caleb, Gwen snapped, her patience gone. What's dumb is you throwing away a multi-billion-dollar deal because you couldn't treat a customer with basic respect. He shifted in his chair, defensive now. So now I'm losing my job over this. I didn't say that yet, Gwen shot back, but you're thinking it. I'm thinking we're all about to feel the weight of your attitude problem. She stood, walked to the door, then turned. You better hope corporate sees this as a teachable moment, not a public one. Outside, she could already hear her assistant saying something about press holding lines and client relations. Meanwhile, back in Dallas, Nina was fielding quiet calls from journalists who sensed something had happened but couldn't quite pin it down. And Danielle. She was already on a flight back, middle seat empty on both sides, window shut, eyes closed. Not because she was tired, but because there was nothing left to explain. The message had been sent, silently, powerfully, and the people who needed to understand, they were starting to feel it. By Friday afternoon, Haven Bank's regional division had launched a diversity and inclusion initiative, complete with slick press graphics and a new training program no one had asked for. Caleb was suspended, not fired, just set aside, an internal, quiet, safe solution. Meanwhile, Rivers Global redirected the capital to smaller community banks across Alabama, Mississippi, and Ohio. Institutions that didn't get PR buzz, but had clean records, strong local ties, and a track record of seeing their customers before judging them. No press release. No announcement. Just action. And those who were watching closely, they noticed. But for those still trying to cover it up, the silence was starting to scream. It had been 4 days since the Springfield visit, and Danielle hadn't said a word publicly. No tweets. No statements. No op-eds in Forbes. Just silence. But that didn't mean the world around her stayed still. Her phone had been vibrating every hour, sometimes every few minutes. Missed calls from journalists, banks, 2 mayors, and at least 1 congressman, all trying to understand the nature of the situation. And now this. A last-minute call from Maurice Alustin, Executive Vice President at Haven Bank's national headquarters in Cincinnati. The man was polished, practiced, a master of corporate cleanup. Danielle answered on the second ring. Miss Rivers, thank you for making time. I didn't. A pause. He let out a light chuckle, the kind meant to break tension without ever addressing it. I understand things didn't go as expected during your visit to our Springfield branch. They went exactly how I expected. He cleared his throat. I want to personally apologize. That incident does not reflect Haven Bank's values, and we've initiated a full review of. Mr. Alustin, she interrupted, her voice calm but cold. Please don't read me the policy sheet. I assure you, this isn't scripted. Is that what you told your diversity team before you gave them a new logo? Another silence. I was hoping, he said, his voice regaining some of its corporate sheen, we could revisit the terms of your investment initiative. We're prepared to offer favorable guarantees, community integration, even direct influence over branch culture oversight, discreetly. Danielle raised an eyebrow. You're offering me hush money dressed as opportunity. He shifted tones, adopting a more earnest, almost pleading, cadence. Miss Rivers, let's not forget how powerful a partnership like this could be. We're not talking about one man's mistake. We're talking about building economic bridges between institutions and underserved communities. Now she laughed, a low, humorless sound. Let me ask you something, Morris. If I had walked into that bank wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of a tailored suit, what do you think would have happened? He didn't answer. She continued, her voice sharpening. You think your teller would have handed my ID back with 2 hands and a smile? You think he'd have offered me coffee? Or maybe asked if I needed help understanding the form? Because if he treats the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar firm like that, how do you think he treats someone on food stamps trying to open their first checking account? Morris sighed. I can't undo what happened, Miss Rivers, but I can make sure it never happens again. No, you can't, she said flatly. Because you're trying to patch a leak without fixing the pipe. Then what would you suggest? Danielle sat back, letting the quiet hang for a second. You don't need a new statement. You need a new culture. One that doesn't just train employees on what not to say, but on what they already believe and why. And in the meantime, I'm moving my capital elsewhere. We can keep this out of the press, I'm sure you can. And if we publicly acknowledge it. Danielle didn't hesitate. I still won't come back. He sighed again, slower this time. The game was up. Is there anything we can do to repair the relationship? You could have started by picking up the phone the same day it happened, not after your legal team built a moat. Point taken. One more thing, Morris. Yes. Caleb Warner. Yes, you're not going to fire him. I know that. That's your choice. And you don't believe in second chances. She took a beat. I believe in accountability. And I believe second chances don't mean avoiding the first consequence. She ended the call. No threats. No press. Just facts. And facts, when spoken with clarity, carry their own weight. But Danielle knew the weight wasn't hers to carry anymore. That was the difference. Springfield moved on, or tried to. The bank stayed open. The ficus by the window kept dying slowly. New customers came and went, unaware of the deal that could have changed the city. No headlines. No scandal. No front-page stories. But in the right rooms, people noticed the silence. Frankfurt called twice, then stopped. Investors whispered in hallways. Competing firms tried to fill the space Rivers Global left behind. But the tone had shifted. Power had left the room, and no one knew how to talk about it. Danielle, meanwhile, was back in Dallas. She didn't sit on panels. Didn't accept interviews. She worked quietly, shifted capital into places that didn't need training to act human. Funded rural banks in Jackson, Mississippi. Signed microloan deals with the credit union in Canton, Ohio. No cameras. No ribbon cuttings. Just reallocation. Because that's what power really looks like, not always loud, just deliberate. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the Springfield incident, Danielle got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Postmarked Springfield. Inside was a short, handwritten letter. The penmanship was rough. Ms. Rivers, I heard what happened. I'm a teller at another branch. We weren't told much, but we know the deal's gone. I don't blame you. I just want you to know, not all of us are like him. Some of us were watching. Some of us learned something. KW. Danielle held the paper for a while. Then she folded it once, slid it into her drawer. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder that even silence can echo. That sometimes the lesson isn't about punishing, it's about waking people up. And the best way to do that? Leave the room. Let them feel the absence. Let them sit with the space you used to fill. Because people learn differently when consequences don't come with press conferences, when correction doesn't come wrapped in shame but in distance. And when dignity walks out the door on its own 2 feet, it makes everyone else ask themselves one quiet question. What did I just lose? You don't always need to scream to be heard. Sometimes all it takes is walking away. You don't have to convince people to respect you. You don't have to beg for dignity in spaces that were never built to recognize you. Sometimes the strongest move is silence. But make sure your silence speaks. Because when people learn that disrespect has a cost, when they learn that behind the face they ignored was a decision-maker with power and memory, they think twice next time. And that's where change begins. Not in loud speeches, but in the quiet realization. We just lost something, and we didn't even see it coming.